I am your co-host, Meredith Banka, here with your host, Debbie Heiser, Three Vines Consulting. How are you, Debbie?
I am fantastic. Thank you. And yourself, Meredith?
I'm great. It's been a great month since we were together the last time. So it's fun to be back here again today. And we're talking about one of my favorite topics, which is one that I think just about everybody struggled with at some point in time, but the idea of decision making.
We are talking about decision making, and we're going to unpack a whole lot of things in this episode.
For sure. And so when we first were having a chat about this, we were talking about when you are trying to cast that big vision, right, for your business, for your life, and you have some decisions to make in that, how that can feel daunting, how that can feel really hard. So I'd love for you to start there for us when you're helping somebody to unpack that big nut around what is their purpose, what is their vision. They've got some decisions to make in that. How do you approach that for people? How do you help them through that?
Yeah, and at the sake of sounding canned, and for those of you that can't see Meredith, she has this shirt on with a can and it says SPO for Spokane, for those of you listening instead of watching. So we might try to fit in canned in here as much as possible. Little giddy today. Anyway, as much as this does sound canned, it's really important to get in touch with source. And what I mean by that is you have to slow down to speed up. And so whether it's taking some walks in nature, whether it's my colleague and mentor just came out with a new one called a spiritual walk, where you go and you create a threshold and you pick up a rock and put into this rock everything you need to let go of and leave it on the trail. And then you look for a piece of wood and pick up the piece of wood that signifies the tree of life. And you think about what's coming into that space that you just let go of. And then again, leaving it on the trail so it can continue to bring life to the trail. Whether it's doing something like that or whether it's taking 5 minutes every morning to do some meditation. There's great meditation apps out there that you can do silently or as guided meditations. And the reason I really start there is not only because this is called faith-infused leadership, but it's really when you're locked in with spirit and you're locked in with like having something bigger than yourself help you see and uncover what your bigger purpose is. It's you step into it, and the decision making is not easy. So we're going to get there, but it's once you understand that and realize that, it's like you're working in a different vibration. So then all of a sudden abundance comes at you. I just recently had kind of gotten away from the fact that I was a teacher and I was looking at all these new shiny objects and, saying, "Ooh, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could do this." And I felt like I was swimming in yogurt. Like I kept swimming and I kept putting out the effort, but I didn't know which direction I was going. And I had something drop in for me. And I realized and remembered that through and through, even back to my undergraduate degree, I am a teacher. And the minute I re-embraced that, and the reason I say re-embrace is I have embraced that in my past, but I kind of let it go. But the minute I re-embraced that, it was like God was telling me, yay, you finally made it back. And like all of these things have been coming at me in a good way, but I then have to make a decision about which way I want to go with that.
And don't you find
part of what we're talking about?
Yeah, and that's so interesting because I think when you are tapped in to source, and you're able to see and realize that purpose, so for you, the teaching component, that then becomes your North Star for making all of the other decisions. And, back in the day when I would do a lot of creative work, and we would have to help clients decide if something was good or bad, right or wrong for their brand, we would always tell them, like, if you don't have the parameters of your brand, then you're constantly going to struggle. Yeah. If you haven't picked the colors of your logo, and if you're not, if it's red and white, and somebody brings you something that's green, then it's really easy for you to say, you know what, great concept, but it's not right for us. Our colors are red and white. Right. But if you don't really know what color your logo is supposed to be, and you're not really sure where it's going to be, then you can get stuck there.
So, and go into overwhelm.
Right.
All of these things are out there. And the really cool thing about it, and I'm going to share this, my experience with this in the past and then just recently too, because what ends up happening, or what I found for me, Meredith, is that when I re-embraced that, it was like all those other squirrels, all those other shiny objects that I was going after, like 50 or 60% of them, I'm like, well, that's easy. I can still do that, but within the framework of being a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it's all just shiny objects, and I need to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right, it adds this level of clarity. And so what I found and what I share with people is, if you are unclear about the next step, and we've talked about that in previous podcasts about faith being, you're given what that next step is. And if you're unclear what that next step is, chances are you've lost sight of your bigger purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, like, being a teacher doesn't mean that I won't be able to go help people heal. I fully anticipate doing that with my new belief restructuring program. And it doesn't mean that I can't still inspire people, because as a teacher, I want to inspire people to change. And so I can still do some of those shiny objects that were out there, but it makes it that much clearer on what direction to go. So again, backing up, if you're unclear about what that next step is of action you need to take, step further back and really tap into source and tap into what God's got to say to you, and figure out what that bigger purpose for you is.
Absolutely. And, as you can tell, we've still got kids at home and all those kinds of things. So I've got a little guy popping in here to bring me his checklist that we've come up with. But this relates, right? So it's the same thing. He knows his purpose each day is that he's got to complete these things. And he's excited. He's bringing it to me saying, Mom, I'm done. I can go on and do that next thing now, right? So this is a framework for him to be able to make the decision of, can I go and play on my technology now? Can I go and jump on the trampoline now? And so it's the same thing. If you don't have clarity for what you are to accomplish through the whole journey, or at least for this next foreseeable chunk of your, time here on Earth, then you do just get stuck in that swirl. You can't decide. You're lost in it. You don't know where to go. And it's not unlike a little 8-year-old that, misbehaves because he doesn't know what he needs to do next, right?
Yeah. Well, it takes so much more energy.
Everything.
Absolutely. And it takes so much more energy to sit and worry and think about it and try to figure it out, versus once you have that clarity. Now, you talked about time frame, and I want to talk about that for a minute, because kind of two things with that. One is that when you look at your time frame, if you're looking in the past, and if you've made decisions and had buyer's remorse, you're looking in the past, and that creates depression. Mm-hmm. And also, if you've made a decision and you're thinking too far in the future, that can create anxiety. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong, you want to have a little bit of a, because you want that growth, you want to be growing through this. But if you stay present, so like with him, he was so excited. It's like 1 o'clock where we're at taping this right now. And he's probably so excited that it's early in the day. He's gotten it done. He's in the present. Mm-hmm. And that next step then appears to you. And it's so critical to stay in the present. And it doesn't mean don't plan for some of the things in the future, but when you stay in the present, then you're headed towards that decision that you made, or that goal. And so the other thing with decision making, and I'm going to work this in as a goal, is you have to burn the boats. And what I mean by that is, in the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he talks about an example of that. Do you have a plan A? And then do you have a backup plan? Mm-hmm. Most people I talk to have a backup plan. And if you have a backup plan, you'll never make your plan A, mm-hmm. because you're focused on the safety net that's back there. And so when you focus on something, that's where you head.
So true.
Oh, and so he talks about this warrior who he shows up with his men, and the army they're going against is twice their size. They just have it so much more together, right, in perception. And so he orders his men to go out to the boats that they came in on and burn the boats. Mm-hmm. And he says to them, we have two choices. We either perish or we beat them.
Yeah.
And that is so true. And I know I've struggled sometimes with that, and always saying, oh, well, there's always this. Well, then it ends up being, oh, well, there's always this. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live an oh, well life.
No, it's too short. You know, and I don't know if I've shared this before on another episode with you or not, but there was a time where my husband decided that he wanted to leave where he was working, where he rented space. He's a barber, where he rented space, and he wanted to open his own barbershop. And there was no, well, maybe I'll keep my foot over here and go and do this. We had to be 100% in, 100%. And that was a decision that was made in December. And he bought a turn of the century building, launched and fully funded a Kickstarter campaign, commercial lending, complete rebuild of a 100-year-plus-year-old building, had to sell a property, renovate a property. I mean, all these things in order to make it happen. I mean, it seemed like almost an insurmountable number of things that had to fall in perfect sequential order in order for that to happen. But it becomes what my dad taught me as an NCO, a no choice option.
Yeah.
Right. When you burn the boat, it's NCO, it's a no choice option. And you're 100% committed.
Absolutely. Well, and I even think about that, Meredith, in relationship to anytime you have a major life event change. I think about people I know that potentially, like have had heart attacks or they have cancer. All of a sudden, they're getting super healthy, they're eating healthy, they're doing exercise, because in their minds, it's a no choice option.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to continue to live. So if you think about that, like that's how I struggle using the word dedicated, but that's how dedicated you need to be and how committed you need to be to that decision. And honestly, when you make that decision, I don't know about you, Meredith, or those of you that are listening or watching, but I know when I am struggling and wrestling with a decision, I am so worn out. I am so stressed out. I am so grouchy because it is consuming me. Where if I just made the flippin' decision and stepped into it, it's like all that goes away and I have so much more energy. Mm-hmm. And it's enjoyable. Like I'm finding joy because I'm stepping into this and I'm enjoying it. Sure. Are there times that you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Absolutely. That happens, but it's that understanding that once you make that decision, it just feels so much better. But I don't know why we tend to stay in this spot for so long before we just can't handle it anymore.
Well, I don't know. Where do you think ego plays into that? Comfort zone, right?
Yeah, that could be an entire another podcast there. But yeah, and it's important though. I'm glad you brought that up because it is really important to understand we each have a dark side, a shadow side, and our light side. And it's important to be aware and acknowledge that shadow side, but not get stuck there. And if you feel yourself getting stuck there, surround yourself with people that will point it out to you lovingly and pull yourself out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So really what you're saying is just trash the plan B. Just get rid of it. Burn it. Go for your plan A. Be solid in making that large decision of who you are, what you're here to do, your purpose, your vision, and trust and believe that all the pieces will fall into place as soon as you make that big choice.
Absolutely. And Meredith, I would say if, as we're closing this out, if anyone here would like to dig into this, understanding your bigger purpose and making that decision, helping to unlock some of those limiting beliefs, please go out to my website, www.3vconsulting, that's 3 spelled out with V as in Victor, consulting.com, and sign up for a half an hour power hour with me because we can get a lot done in 30 minutes. And and I'm looking forward to sharing some of my belief restructuring program that's coming out. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. So thanks, Debbie. And thank you everyone for this episode of Faith Infused Leadership. I'm your co-host, Meredith Banka, here with Debbie Heiser, and we will see you all the next time.